Welcome to Let's Get Stringing. What I have with me today is the latest version of the Babbler Pure Strike 98. It's Babbler's control line, engineered in France. Pure Strike, create and control. The beam width is on medium size. FSI control, NF2 tech. I think that's similar to the previous versions. And here it says 16 by 19 string pattern. Recommended tension is 22 to 26 kg. 32 centimeter balance with 305 gram unstrung. So I'll go ahead and get it strung up. Stay tuned. Let's mount this with Babbler, butt side facing up.
Landscape that McDonald's is in actually look like right now, and where exactly does McDonald's fall in that?
Yes, certainly. From a consumer standpoint, one of the things that we like about McDonald's is it's a bit more defensive, and you've seen that here. Consumers are stressed, a bit stressed and strapped, and McDonald's is synonymous with value. For us, we see it as a way to obviously play from a discretionary standpoint, but an offering that's their offering is a bit more defensive in nature. So we see it as a bit more of a defensive staple. But I think being able to
Going with the same head velocity multi-filament at 55 pounds. This racket has 8 grommet holes in the throat, so we'll go ahead and start from the head. Those of you that were telling me to use the Diablo for polys, I don't use Diablo for polys. However, I do use it for soft strings such as in multi-filament, synthetic gut, nylons, natural gut, etc. Since this is a new racket, so even though I'm stringing at 55 pounds, it's the same as her other Babbler Pure Strike team that I just strung over here. This is her usual racket before she just picked up this new Pure Strike. Even though it's the same tension I just strung here, I will try to clamp off every string as close as possible to the grommet so that we can get as high of a tension as possible, because in the case of brand new rackets, these grommets from the factory are seated in place. They look pretty tight for the most part, but they haven't been strung, and therefore there's a certain amount of looseness inside that would allow the string tension to reduce. So in order to counter that, to doing everything possible to clamp off everything as tight as possible. Now it'll be interesting to see if this racket has all the skip holes, all the same skip holes as her Pure Strike team.
And they don't, because I just realized this afterwards that this is actually a 98 square inch frame and not a 100.
So looking at her Pure Strike team over here, looks like from the top there's grommet hole strips at 7 and 9 up top, and once again 7 and 9 down the bottom.
As you can tell from the paint job, that her other frame is actually a version 3 and this is a version 4. And I did confirm that on the version 4 100 square inch frame, the skips are still at 7 and 9, whereas with the 98 square inch frame that I'm stringing right now, the skip hole will be at 8 instead, top and bottom.
Yeah, matter of fact, a lot of these grommets, the shape of it is still not bent in the direction of where the string is going. You see how it's actually bent 45 degrees. However, the string's wanting to go 90 degrees. Therefore, in the process of, you see, once I pull the tension, the grommet hole will start pointing more straight toward the top of the head. In the process of doing that, the string will end up getting stretched a little bit further distance, and therefore lose a little bit of tension. Yeah, see, this grommet is just barely hanging out, like it's not fully seated in. It's like it almost went inside the frame. So the first skips at this with this racket is the grommet hole 8 up top, as well as down at the bottom. The other one was 7 and 9, both top and bottom. So the drill pattern is different.
I do want to just talk a little bit more about the Republican Party. You made the point at the start that the Republican wasn't expected to win Virginia or New Jersey. I'd like to say in New Jersey, a little bit closer than maybe that would suggest. But still, you take a look at some of the exit polls conducted by the Associated Press, saying that about 6 to 10 voters in Virginia and New Jersey, they describe themselves as angry or dissatisfied with the current state of the country. You also have national polls that are showing that the majority of voters now disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. Again, for Congressman, we are about a year out from those midterm elections, and a lot of people
Now let's go ahead on the crosses. Before I do that, let's pluck these strings. Very close. There's no need for any plugging in this case. I usually start pulling from the second string, but due to viewer complaints, I'm going to start pulling from the first string then. Just at regular tension, and then before I tie off the tie-off knot, I'll pull it again at the tie-off knot tension. Hopefully people will approve of me doing this. This will result in a tighter string bed toward the top of the frame for sure. before I pull that fourth cross, let me tie off this first string. Natural spot to tie it off. It's right next door, right at the grommet for the 8th main. So that's grommet hole 9. On my knuckle again, hurts like hell. That's one thing I don't like about this machine. It spins back and hurts your freaking knuckles so hard. So one more thing I want to mention is that usually before I go ahead and weave it, the natural rotation is like this, right? And I realized after doing this motion time and time again, your string gets all rotated in the same direction. That's not gonna help with preventing this coiling effect. Therefore, I try to rotate it the other way. So in this case, instead of rotating it this way, I'm rotating it this way. You know, if it's coiling too much, then you could like rotate it again. Help it like uncoil itself down the road. And that would still save more time than run through all the strings in your hands and try and uncoil them. So I'm going to coil it this way again, to my right, like clockwise direction, let's say. I don't really keep track of which way the the string naturally coils coming off the pack. But if I find that this motion is really not helping the cause, then when I go weave the next strings, I will do the motion the opposite way. This is not so, the difference is not so evident with the round strings, whereas with the shaped polys, if your strings always coil and like wound up, like all twisted throughout the length of the cross string, it's going to be very evident, you know, under the light and the reflections. When you dip. If like certain portion of your cross is not wound up, and then certain portions are, overall it might have an effect on the way that the string bed strikes the ball, believe it or not. I believe one of the unpredictabilities from a shaped poly string bed has to do with you know, how careful you are with what I just mentioned. If you don't have an evenly distributed string bed, like some tops and the valleys are not even, like certain points are higher in the sweet spot and certain points are lower in the sweet spot, then depending on where the ball strikes, you're not going to have a uniform response. I know I'm talking about a very minute difference that most players would probably not even be able to feel as they go and hit the ball, but as a stringer, I try to strive for, that's the bar that I give myself. I don't hear any other stringer talk about it. Most of them just care about getting it done under 15-20 minutes. This is the other quality aspects that's hardly ever talked about. Let me know what your thoughts are. The Jabroni stringer has criticized me, shout out Jabroni stringer, criticized me for the amount of time that I spend pulling each strings. He saw that I spent much more time, I waited much more time before clamping off my first mains versus, you know, the subsequent mains. So his message is that I should spend the same amount of time on each string. And I would agree. In the perfect world with a perfect machine, I could do that. But the way I've been doing it with my starting method on my mains, I'm able to achieve even tension, you know, from left to right, and I'm happy with that. So if there's no issues with that, there's no reason for me to change right now. Like, if I were to get a different machine with, you know, different components and different geometries, then I would have to go through those reevaluate again. Before these intersection gets through setting stone here, I want to get them out so they don't all start forming trenches, and trenches can end up developing notches later on. At least I want them to be straight and not crooked. It's already very hard for me to get them out of the grooves that is being formed just in the last few minutes. last string. I'm pushing my clamps a little bit forward to give myself more room to tie off on before that grommet hole. Just making sure I didn't misweave anything. Don't see anything that jumps out at me. Easiest hole to tie off on is grommet number 7. Down at the throat. Don't have a lot of space to work with. Obviously I could give myself more room by backing up the clamp even more, but then that would mean that I would lose even more tension. Got rid of that slack out there. Try not to pull too hard because these multi-filaments can actually break off. The other day I pulled off on a knot of copoly Celinco Mach 10, believe it or not, Mach 10 17 gauge, and it broke. My Parnell knot actually yanked out the second loop of the Parnell knot, and then I ended up with just the first half hitch remaining. Since it's my own racket, I just make sure I pulled it tight on that first hitch, and I just left it as is, because obviously at that point, unless I cut it all out and restring it, there's no way for me to patch up that knot properly, at least. Luckily, for the most part, these already got adjusted right on the stringer already.
And here's the final specs that I measured without the dampener. And here's the Tennis Warehouse measurements. And keep in mind that they usually use the 16 gauge strings, whereas I use the 17. That's why it's a little lighter compared to theirs.
Thank you very much for watching, and I shall catch you next time. Take care.